I had folks that I was interviewing that experienced heart attacks, that were experiencing significant other health issues, all this sort of stuff, because of this productivity, busy Olympics sort of stuff, and this isolation and burnout sort of stuff that middle managers are having. I talk about this as much as I can with folks because I just think that there's this idea of, well, if we just leave middle managers alone, they're fine.
Welcome to Project Candor. Today we have a fantastic guest, Mickey Fitch-Collins. Before we begin, I'm going to share a few of Mickey's highlights. But just know we're saving some really good surprises for the end when we play Two Truths and a Lie. So stay with us. Now, I have to tell you something. When I first spoke with Mickey about coming on the podcast, I was not prepared. I was not prepared to meet this wonderful, on-fire personality who absolutely exudes happiness and energy. She brings this combination of depth and joy that fills the room even through a screen. Mickey holds a PhD in leadership in higher education and has built a career that spans academia, educational technology, and corporate learning. She's worked from the front lines all the way to the C-suite. Her leadership philosophy was reshaped in the wake of 9/11, and during what she calls her great discernment, she made a bold pivot into learning and development. Today, she helps people get better at their work, one relationship at a time. Mickey, thank you for honoring us. Welcome aboard.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Jeanne, so much for the opportunity. And what I feel so warm and fuzzy on the inside with that intro. We had such a lovely conversation in our first opportunity meeting and preparing for the show here. So I've been thinking so much and I've been reflecting so much on that conversation. So I'm glad to know that the energy exchange is mutual there.
Yes, it definitely was. I was so happy after I got off that call.
I love it.
All right, so what we'll do is start with some questions up first so we can get to know you. So are you ready to go?
Absolutely. Let's roll.
Wonderful. I shared what stuck with me when I first met you, that joyful, on-fire energy. So when people meet you for the first time, what do you think they often get wrong about you?
Okay. All right. I think the thing that people probably get wrong about me is that I'm a goofball all the time. Because I come off as I'm kind of one of those, like, you get what you see sort of people, and or you see what you get, however that phrase goes. I'm a very authentic presence, and I like to joke. I like to have a good time. I like to look for, I think especially these days, finding those moments of levity and bringing a little bit of humor, I think is really important to new relationships. And I think there's a lot of folks that get really nervous when they're meeting new people or they're in social settings or, whatever. And I experience some of that too. And I think one of the challenges sometimes is that folks don't realize that I have this serious side to me too, that I'm not just this like playful teddy bear sort of person, but that I do have a serious side, that I'm not all jokes and not all fun. And, that's kind of bit me a couple of times in my role as a supervisor on different teams and stuff, right? Of like people being like, wait a minute, like what happened to fun, playful Mickey here? And I'm like, I'm a Gemini. There's two sides, the twins, right? Like there's two sides of Mickey. Yeah.
Right. I find it fun to meet new people, but I also find it, like a little stressful. It's just, you don't know that person really, but then you wish you could get through that first part and be at that normalization stage.
Yeah.
And when you just know them and you feel comfortable with them. But that's a great answer. Thank you. You began building a professional career as a teenager. When we think about young prodigies, whether it's someone like Leanne Rimes, or, she had released Blue at 13 and then was a Grammy winner at 14. So I threw her in. Or Pablo Picasso, who reportedly was drawing before he could talk. Or Magnus Carlsen, he became a chess grandmaster at 13. And I had to throw in Magnus because that's my husband's name. there's
Love that.
obvious talent, but there's also enormous pressure. Without giving away your headline, what kind of inner backbone did you have to grow to hold your own in a room full of adults? And what did it require of you emotionally?
I think some of the greatest challenges are for, I see this actually watching the Olympics right now, like the Winter Olympics. Just last night, I was watching, and these teenagers flying down these, slalom, hills and on the ice and luge and all this sort of stuff. And there is a ton of pressure to perform, right? Everybody has a ton of pressure to perform, especially in the workplace, right? But also in our personal lives, right? We have a lot of stated and unstated expectations that we have of one another as human beings. And I think one of the greatest challenges is for young people, whether they're kid actors, athletes, academics, whatever it is, when kids are put in the same arena as adults. And there's that backbone that you mentioned. There's so much to that because there's a competence component of like, can you actually hold your own in conversations or whatever the task or whatever the thing is that you're supposed to do, whether it's acting or skiing or whatever that might be. So there's the competence piece, but there's also the confidence. And, I'm sure you've heard that phrase of, fake it till you make it, right? Of like, people like just pretend. Actually, I heard it stated really well. I was listening to a podcast. Tim Ferriss, he's a fantastic guy. I love listening to his podcast. Had a guest on the other day and because kind of talking about the importance of acting as if, because if we act as if, then the rest of our traits and capabilities and skills might follow. That was a really big thing for me as a teenager when I had to go into these rooms and I had that pressure to perform was, okay, do I know what I'm talking about, right? So the confidence or the competence piece. But the confidence was I just need to start acting as though I'm just like everybody else in the room, right? That like I deserve to be here just as much as everybody else. And that was really hard because for a while, like it did feel like I was faking it, right? And I hadn't necessarily at that time heard that phrase like fake it till you make it sort of thing. I feel like that's something that we don't really hear until we're, kind of into our young adulthood or whatnot. So I think the balance of the confidence and competence piece, but for me to build that spine or that backbone with strength really was pouring into competence and really studying my craft and really, that was my world. I became obsessive with the thing that brought me into the room. And so that I knew there were certain situations and places when I was in the room with grown adults, with people that were 2, 3, 4 times my age, I knew more than them, right? And so that knowledge
That's wonderful.
piece, knowledge is power, right? Like knowledge does become a powerful component. And so like as I built that competence, that then brought this confidence piece into it as well.
That's wonderful. It's amazing that you could hold your still youthful nature, knowing that you, as a young performer, without giving anything away, I'm still trying, to, see an adult and think, why are they not understanding this concept?
Right. And trying to, I think at that time, I was 14, 15, 16 years old, right? You're still absolutely finding myself, right? I was massively still in identity formation and kind of discovering like who is Mickey and, all this sort of stuff.
Right.
But what I realized in those moments, and I probably realized it earlier, but learning is such a core value to me. It is absolutely, from the day I could read, this whole entire world. I'm watching this. I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son. I'm watching this in my daughter as she's learning. She's kind of early stages reading right now. And, you can see that broadening of like, oh my gosh, like there's this whole entire world of understanding and learning and knowing that's out there. And that was what gave me strength was I have the ability to learn and grow. And for me, this was pre-social media. This was pre-YouTube, pre-internet, all of this sort of stuff. But still, I felt like as long as I build my competence, like as long as I learn and obsess over my craft, over what I was performing in, that everything else will come with that, right? And I remember kind of thinking, like, having those thoughts in a more, rudimentary teenage sort of way. But I remember having those thoughts of like, as long as I continue to learn and grow, I will be better. I can be better. I will continue to be better.
Fantastic.
I still feel that way as an adult.
Oh, good. I don't know that I have that much energy when I approach something that I'm doing, but that is a fantastic attitude. So you spent time in competitive outdoor environments that are traditionally male dominated. So what does it take for a woman, especially a young woman, to command respect in spaces when she's not the expected voice?
That was really hard, right? So yes, this competitive outdoor environment that I was in, predominantly male, predominantly Southern. I was a kid at the time. I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago, so definitely a Northerner. So predominantly male, predominantly Southern United States, very traditional. And for me, I'm coming into that as a 14, 15-year-old girl who's also going through the identity formation process of realizing, well, I am not like everybody else, kind of going through the process and recognizing like that's, that in those early stages, that was my earliest recognition of like, oh, I don't think that I am a heterosexual person, right? So like one of these is not like the others sort of thing. And, there were women that were in that space, but they were mostly middle-aged women, mid 50s, early 60s, very much kind of this blonde bombshell, like very made up, just totally different sort of thing. And I was looking at that and I'm like, I don't fit that either, because the look, this persona that these women were wearing, I was like, that's not my jam. And like, that doesn't make sense for what we're doing anyway, right? I see this all the time too with, again, a variety of different sports of like, still, why are women expected to be fully made up and hair fully done and all of this sort of stuff? And the men look like trash, but it's the same sport. So there was that piece. I think the other piece too was just building this capacity to own my voice and own my presence, to captivate a room, to captivate a crowd. And that was one of the things that, in essence, that I compensated, and I put that in air quotes, but compensated for being a minoritized person in that sort of environment. It was really hard, I think, too, because in this competitive outdoor environment, there were, as I would say, men behaving badly, okay? Derogatory comments about women, about other underrepresented folks, right? And I am a woman. I am, again, going through this identity formation process of realizing that I'm a gay woman. And I'm also hearing comments about non-white people, people with disabilities, all this sort of stuff, and realizing like this is a very uncomfortable environment. And I still need to be able to compete in this environment. And so some of that was just kind of learning how to thicken my skin, but also learning how to find the words to confront some of that stuff too. And when I started doing some of that, right, what happened was there was a ripple effect, right, to the men that I was part of these different teams and different organizations, right? There was a behavior change of like, hey, she's one of us, right? Like she's part of us. She's part of this team, and a very cool part of this team, a very different part of this team. We have something very different than other organizations do. And so like, let's prop her up. And there was this shift that happened.
Yeah, that's a wonderful shift.
It was a wonderful shift. Absolutely. Right. And these guys were, some of the younger ones, kind of function as kind of like older brother types, but a lot of them were like my dad's age. And I was a minor at the time doing this sort of stuff. So my dad was always with me at all of these things. Right. So, there were these guys that were like kind of like secondary, like uncle sort of guys, that just became this crew that I was a part of that. And it did shift and change. Right. But it was hard for me. Especially because people wanted to really, really headline on the girl thing, right? Like, oh my gosh, you're a girl doing this. Like, how can girls possibly do this? And I was always befuddled by that. And I still, as somebody in my mid 40s, I still am befuddled by it because it's like, girls can do all of the things that boys can do, women can do all of the things that men can do. Like, why we think that there's this, oh, because you're this, then you can't do that, was always so confusing to me, because I'm like, I was raised, I mean, the way that my parents raised me was like, yeah, you're doing this competitive outdoor thing, and like, you're nailing it. Like, just do it, keep doing it. There was no like, oh, maybe you shouldn't do this because you're a girl, right? That never happened.
Oh, that's so good that your parents were very supportive and that they did not put you down for what you wanted to do. I mean,
Not at
were
all.
they also involved without, again, saying what it was? Were they also involved?
Yeah, my dad was very front and center, was always present, again, because I was under 18. There was kind of, his presence was needed for legality sort of stuff and things of that sort. He had to sign all the paperwork and all that. And there was, finances and stuff. And so my parents were definitely involved in all of those pieces. My mom was a huge support. She, was always making sure that I was like prepped and ready to go. And, that she was a huge, I would call her like the operations specialist. Like, she always made sure that I was prepared. I was ready to go. I had all of the gear that I needed. I had all of my specialized clothing that I needed to have, all of those sort of things. She was the operations specialist when it came to me doing what I was doing. And my dad was really there on the sidelines, I mean, and these were the days, again, this is about 30 years ago. These were the days of, buying film canister, and taking all these pictures. He was taking just dozens and dozens, hundreds of pictures all the time, putting together, carousels, slide carousels of photos and all this, that sort of thing. And really helping me a lot with a lot of like the business aspects and marketing aspects. And so, yeah, it was very much, my sister, when I was doing this, she was, late high school, early college. And so she was kind of doing her own thing, but she was excited for me.
Oh, I guess I was asking from the aspect of who introduced you to this
Yeah.
activity. Was it your dad or mom?
Yeah, it was, I mean, where I grew up,
Okay.
again, without giving it away, the activity was very prevalent where I grew up. So it was just something that I did as a little one, that my parents, it was, kind of those things that you get into when you're kind of a young toddler and all that sort of stuff. And then, I met some people that were doing this sort of thing professionally, and started kind of coming around, sniffing around and kind of saying like, well, I think I could do that, right? And started kind of doing it in an amateur sort of function, as people do with these kind of competitive outdoor sort of things. You start kind of doing it in an amateur kind of local sort of piece. And there started being some media coverage about me. And again, I grew up in the Chicago area. And so, the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun-Times, the big newspapers, again,
You're big.
30 years ago, so I mean, the newspapers started picking up and some of the TV shows and stuff like that. And then that's when things really catapulted for me to the national level. And I started getting pulled into some of these larger companies and organizations to be doing this on a professional level, which was wild, right? Because I was just a teenage kid in high school,
Oh. Name some TV shows.
Sure. For anybody that is in the Midwest that's watching or listening, Midwest Outdoors, this is going to start kind of giving some of perhaps some of this stuff away.
Okay, maybe we should stop.
Yeah.
We'll wait on that.
But I was on, I mean, thinking about like networks and things like that. I was on ESPN and Fox Sports at one point. And again, this is mid 90s. I had an invitation to meet Oprah and do like a small snippet on the Oprah show when she was still based in Chicago. So I got the opportunity to do some larger scale media pieces. Yeah.
Nice. That's so exciting. I can't even imagine. All right, let's go on before I get into too much of your reveal. So 2 weeks into one of your early leadership roles, 9/11 happened. You said it reshaped your leadership philosophy in a matter of minutes. What changed in you that day that still shapes you and how you lead today?
Yeah. All of us that were alive, which is, if it's funny sometimes to me that I'm interacting with people professionally that some folks weren't alive, when 9/11 happened. But for the rest of us, right, we all have our 9/11 story, right? Where were we and what was going on and stuff. For me, That was my the start of my junior year of college. And I had gotten a job as a student leader in the residence halls in the dorms on campus. And I had gotten this job kind of on the skin of my teeth. I was a little bit of a troublemaker in college. I was a good community builder, we could say. But I was building community around the wrong things and kind of outside the policies and all this sort of stuff. And I had applied for this student leadership role and kind of, got the role, I think, by the skin of my teeth of like, hopefully you behave, right? Because now we're expecting you to lead other students and stuff. And so my job was essentially in this residence hall of, 300-400 people, was to be the leader on the floor, to help kind of, students navigate college and make friends and, have a good time, right? And we had gone through, before the start of the school year in August, we had gone through a couple of weeks of training, right? And most of that training stuff was like, understand, like, how do you build social gatherings and how do you get people to like meet one another, like learning icebreakers and, like all of those sort of super fun things. But it was about the fun and the social stuff. And then you fast forward to my second week in that job and 9/11 happens. And, again, everybody has their stories and their parts and pieces of kind of where were you when and what was going on and all this sort of stuff. But in that day and the next 48 hours or so, what I realized was my job was not about root beer float parties and getting people together to watch Packers games or anything like that. For anybody who's, listening and watching, I live in Wisconsin. You could probably already tell that out of my accent, but, that was not my job anymore. My job was to figure out with my peers, how do we navigate what is happening in our country? Because nobody, again, within those first couple of days, I think everybody was like, is it going to happen again? Right? Like, is there something else that's going to happen today or tomorrow? Right? I mean, I think everybody was kind of on pins and needles. And also, right, people were starting to find out the loss of loved ones and friends and family. I also, what I share with people too, is that I firmly believe that my generation of folks that were going through college, that was the last generation of kids that went through the ROTC programs as a way to finance their education, right? And so I had a number of students, my peers that were on the floor that were in ROTC programs that were, kind of part and parcel to National Guard that then started, kind of becoming like pulled into National Guard. I had other folks that were in National Guard that then became deployed like very immediately in the weeks after, which was bonkers to me, right? Because I'm like, what? Like, where did...
Yeah, you still had to finish your education. Where are you going? What's going on?
And...
You're too young.
Yes. And just realizing that, like, and somewhere in here, and of course, like most universities, classes were paused for a couple of days and stuff. But I remember our leadership team, our team of student staff with our professional staff member, I remember us, I can remember it like it was yesterday, even, it was, 25 years ago, gathering up and us being like, what do we do? And the conversation was just like, we just need to learn to be with people. And what that shaped for me was that exactly is like, you just need to learn how to be with people. How do you be with people when you don't know what to say? How do you be with people when there isn't anything to say? How do you be with people when there's no words to describe what you're thinking or feeling? There's no solution to what's going on. And for all of us at that point, right, we're 20 years old. We had lived, I mean, we were 10-ish or so years old when Desert Storm and stuff happened, right? Wrap your yellow ribbon around your tree.
Right.
But that felt very far off. It felt very distant. It felt very much...
It was not in the United States.
I mean, it literally was distant. But it was this thing that was on the TV, right? And this was a thing that was in the country. This was a thing that was affecting our families and our friends. And
right.
And so
it touched
how
the biggest city in the United States, and it was devastating to watch.
Yeah. And what changed for me in terms of my leadership philosophy was recognizing that it's not about how many people can I get to attend this program or attend this event, or how much fun did people have, or, whatever, how crazy were the shenanigans that we got into, right? What changed in my leadership philosophy was I recognized that one of the best skills, one of the best things that I could do for other humans is to just like share space with them and to talk with them and get to know them and be with them. And relationship building, right? I mean, that to me has always been, since then, I am a relationship builder. I'm a bridge maker. I'm a bridge repair person, whatever it is. I mean, that is my primary thing. I jokingly tell people is I can build a relationship with a sneaker if you put it in front of me, right? But I think that it started with the teenage years, right? And what I was doing in my teenage years. But going through the crisis of 9/11 really codified my role is to lead other people one relationship at a time.
Yeah, and some kind of traumas and stuff, I always learned that the best thing is to just, like you said, be with people, but just acknowledge we're breathing. We're still breathing. Just keep breathing. Just be calm. Just keep breathing. Because something like that was, I mean, I have my own story, but I won't go into it. But it's something that changes you. And if it doesn't change you, then you better think about yourself a little bit more deeply about. Oh yeah, it's like not, if you're that numb to it, then we've got a problem here.
Yeah, I mean, I think about, and I'm sure there's thousands of people that are the same way, but I mean, I think about that probably on a weekly basis, right? And what I've learned from that, what I've gleaned from that shifts and changes over the years, right? Like I'm still learning from that experience. And that really impacts kind of the way that I show up with other people and what I consider to be important, right? Like it's not, how many people showed up and how, again, like these superficial metrics of what we consider to be success, like that went out the window for me as a 20-year-old, and it got redefined by this crisis, this national crisis of just like what is actually valuable, what is actually important. And it's the people right in front of you, right? It's the person sitting next to you.
Yeah, it's kind of like that words in a song. I think of it, and probably not even just in a song, but they call it the age of innocence. It's gone.
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, that is a depressing thought, but it's good that it shaped you in a way to build you for the future, because I know, like I read, you have your PhD now and you are working with people, so that's probably was the start of that.
Absolutely.
So you talk about middle managers as the emotional shock absorbers of organizations. So why are so many of them quietly exhausted? And how much of that comes from what you call productivity theater? I've never heard of that. So what are we performing instead of actually fixing?
Yeah. Well, let me back up a little bit. So the middle manager stuff for me, like anybody who kind of, is working through different roles, I, climbed the ladder. My first career, I always tell people my first career was higher education administration. So I worked for a variety of different colleges and universities, and I sat in a number of middle manager roles. Then I continued to move up the rankings, or so to speak. And what I noticed, what I felt, what I was experiencing, what I was watching in other people was, that like middle managers they're like the Gumbies of organizations, right? They're constantly being pulled in all these different directions.
I love Gumby.
And I mean, that's the best visualization is Gumby, or gosh, I forget the other character. There was a character, a doll that you could stretch him all the time.
Stretch Armstrong.
Stretch Armstrong. Thank you. Yeah. And when I started pursuing, I always knew that I wanted to get my PhD. And when I started pursuing my PhD, it was 2015. I was working full time. I was a director level person at an organization at that time. And very early on in that doctoral journey, they want you to start thinking about what is it that you want to research? What do you want to do your dissertation on, right? Because they don't want people to be like in PhD programs for 8 years and all this sort of stuff. They want you to get onto this. And I just started thinking about all the time of like middle managers are always squished, right? They're squished, they're pulled, they're isolated, they're lonely, they're frustrated, they're burnt out, all of this sort of stuff. And that became my research. What ultimately I looked at was how does people's self-efficacy, so middle managers, their self-efficacy, so like my view of my ability to get the job done, so to speak, how is that influenced by the supervision that they're getting, right? So the boss's supervision that that they're getting to themselves as a middle manager, and then professional development. And what I found through that research process was really dark and dismal, which is to say that most middle managers are essentially having to create and craft their own support structures for them, because there's this idea that like, well, if you're a middle manager, you clearly know enough and you clearly have figured out enough. You don't really need a ton of support. Let me just get out of your way and just like leave you alone, let you do your thing, which on the surface sounds amazing, right? Like get out of the way and let me do my job, right? Because nobody wants to be micromanaged. The problem with that, though, is that these are still real human beings that have questions and they have concerns. They have a need to be seen and see other people. They have a need to be in networks, like all this sort of stuff. And so there's this kind of dearth of support for these folks. And we see this across all different types of organizations. This isn't just a higher ed thing. This is across all industries, corporate, nonprofit, government, whatever it is, big, small, in between, is that middle managers are expected to wear a ton of hats, and they're in this constant push-pull between their supervisors and their frontline folks to be advocates and be supports and all this sort of stuff. What I've done with that, right, is extrapolated that out to these different environments. In fact, in my current role, I actually created a workshop that's entirely around this, is like, what do we do to prevent burnout for middle managers? But coming to this concept of productivity theater, okay? Since it's Olympics time, I will go ahead and share this analogy. I always tell people is like in the workplace, a lot of people are trying to get on the medal board of the busy Olympics, right? Like whether it's gold, silver, or bronze. There's this idea that like just chase the medal in the busy Olympics. Performative busyness, right? Performative productivity. If I can just show you all the clicks and all the things and busy, how's things going? Oh, I'm so busy, right? You know, what did you, oh, I had 17 different meetings today, right? Like we start like just sharing this busyness as though this is what shows value, right? Like this is the stuff, these are the core ingredients of burnout, right? This is the stuff that makes people hate their work. This is the stuff that makes people chuck their jobs and say, I gotta get out of here. This is the stuff, I mean, I actually, in my research, I had folks that I was interviewing that experienced heart attacks, that were experiencing significant other health issues, all this sort of stuff because of this productivity, busy Olympics sort of stuff, and this isolation and burnout sort of stuff that middle managers are having. And I talk about this as much as I can with folks, because I just think that there's this idea of, well, if we just leave middle managers alone, they're fine, right? Like they're doing important work for the organization. But they are, people always say it's lonely at the top. And I've been in I've been in a C-suite role. I've been, in that, yeah, it is lonely. But where it's especially lonely is when you're the middle manager of one, when you don't have a peer, when you went from being one of the individual contributors and now you're the boss, right? When you don't have people that are pouring on support structures and stuff. And so to me, I mean, that's one of those things I feel like I'm like evangelizing all the time. Is like, we have to support, we have to be better supervisors to those middle managers, and we must give them better support in terms of continued learning and development. I'm going to step off my soapbox now.
No, because you're making me think about myself, because I've been in program management for years and years. And so one of the things that I realized for middle managers, and I've been in that seat too, is just like the reason why they throw out all this busy, I believe, is because that is what they're asked to show progress, but it's not even meaningful data.
Bingo.
And so it goes way up to the C-suite, and they're like looking, what am I looking at? They did 50 tasks. That is not telling me strategically what I need to know to move forward. So you're causing all this busy work for no reason at all. And for not being able to actually run a business effectively.
Yeah.
Because you want your execs to be able to point out through what they see and what they've been informed of how they can make changes, how they can step in and help these people. But instead, it's just a sack of status reports showing all of this junk that everybody's got piled on them, and it's not effective.
You're absolutely right. And I mean, I think one of the greatest challenges, and especially these days, in some of the economic conditions that we're in, I think, moving into this age, we're in this age of AI and kind of figuring out how this works for everybody. But stop chasing the busy Olympics, like these metrics that people are feeling like are report worthy or important or valuable. It's like, but what is that actually doing? And this is like the thing that like I ask people, and I drive this home in the work that I do day to day now, is like, what is that actually doing to help make impact for the business or the organization? What does that do to show that you are valuable and you're bringing value? How does all of these clicks and punches and reports and all of this sort of stuff actually move the needle on the strategy and the vision of your organization? If you can't answer those questions with little to no hesitation of if this, then that, right? Like if you can't answer that, all of those reports and all that stuff that you're doing, it's a complete waste of time, right? And the talent, whether it's middle managers, frontline folks, senior directors, whatever it is, your talent pool is spending a bunch of time being busy doing stuff and things instead of actually pursuing strategy, instead of actually pursuing impact. And that's the stuff that, I mean, human beings, like we are really intelligent folks, right? This is the stuff that people, especially now as we're bringing AI into our work, this is the stuff that we're recognizing. Wow, there's a lot of my day-to-day that's just a bunch of punch and click sort of stuff, right?
Right.
I tell people this all the time. It doesn't matter your industry. It doesn't matter the type of organization, where in the world you are. Most of us, our job is problem solution, problem solution, problem solution, problem solution, right? Like that's what most of us do. But if in that process, we're having to document the number of times that we click this, or we're having to, report this thing or whatever, and still, instead of focusing on the solution and the impact, right? And the process that got us there, right? Like that's the critical thinking. That's the problem solving. That's the decision making. That's the stuff that's impact and strategy. It's not all the minutia of the busy Olympics. Yeah, the performative theater of busyness and productivity.
Yeah, I love that concept, though. You definitely could support and help businesses in that. And I think some of it, they're doing this to themselves as well, because they don't allow for these middle managers to understand, how do I show what I do unless I click and check and I did 100 things, right? Because their metrics keep getting raised every year. Like you want to be a top performer. So it's all based on all of this junk that's worthless. And so it just keeps generating the same product constantly. Yeah. And so you've got a lot of work to do.
We all do. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but this is the work I do now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I like stuff like this because I always try to figure out, what do you do? And I always hated it at the end of the year when you're just trying to make your goals for the next year. Like, how can I go more than this? How can I do more than I'm already doing? I can't. But then you always had to say, put something down, and then there was another measurement you had to check off and put on status. And it's like, oh my cow. Okay. Well, Mickey, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate all that you've been saying. Before we dock this ship, though, we have to play our favorite game. Here on Project Candor, and on every episode, we have a segment called Two Truths and a Lie. You've given me 3 headlines from your life, and now we get to dig deep. I'm going to read them, and I'll take a guess at which one I think is the lie.
Okay.
Then you'll walk us through the story behind each one, telling us, without telling us. Don't tell us the lie until the very end.
Sure.
And then you'll reveal it to us. So are you ready?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to be sharing my screen here.
This episode is sponsored by Rebel 180, the home of brave pivots and fresh starts. Rebel 180 is all about helping you rediscover what's possible when you stop settling and start listening to that little tug inside that says, life can be different. Whether you're navigating a career shift, dreaming about a new direction, or standing at the crossroads wondering if it's time for your own 180-degree turn, Rebel 180 is a reminder you don't need permission to change your story. Sponsor, we're stepping into the world of tech. Simple Socket Print, the lightweight, blazing fast label print solution designed for those who need reliability without the bloat. With version 1.5, you get instant printing in milliseconds, fully maintained print sequence, and automatic base 64 decoding, all without needing print driver installs. If you're running SQL Server 2016 or newer, Simple Socket Print 1.5 drops right in and gets to work. Keep your workflow simple. Keep your label printing fast with Simple Socket Print. Thank you to our sponsors.
So on screen, if you're visually watching this, if not, I'll read them out to the people just listening because they're important to us too. There was a chapter of Mickey's life when her job description was literally catch bass. That's your number one story. Catch bass. Number two story, Mickey says, getting fired from a job was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And number three, Mickey auditioned for Survivor. They said yes, and she said no. Okay, so I get to guess first, and I'm going to guess number two, because I wouldn't like to get fired. I don't know if that would be the best thing that ever happened to me, because then I go through that emotional, why didn't they like me?
Sure.
So I'm going to go through, and I'm going to say that was not your, that's your lie. So you start telling us, what do you have about number one that we may not have already revealed?
So here's the thing. I think I'm a pretty good storyteller. So I feel like I could spin a tale on any one of these. I think it goes back to that whole building a relationship with the sneaker thing. But all right. So which one do you want me to start with first?
Number one, about your job was literally catch bass.
Sure. Yeah. I was a professional bass fisherman and my job was to catch bass. And so what I did all the time was go out and go fishing and travel all over the place and catch fish.
Wow. And what was the biggest bass you ever caught?
Ooh, the biggest one, just shy of 6 pounds.
How big do they get? How big do they get?
So here's the thing: is like the world record. They get huge ones in like places like Texas and California. And like, I think the world record's like 21 pounds or something like that. But like, that's crazy business, right? I mean, like,
right.
There's a lake in Texas that like people regularly get like 10-pound ones. And I really want to go there. But 6 pounds is a big one for me. And of course, as you would imagine, and you, I believe, are in Florida, right? Like the warm states, long growing season. It's just like vegetables, right? Fish can grow all year long. Where I live in northern Wisconsin, right? They have about 2 minutes of summer to be able to grow. So, yeah.
Then they freeze.
Then they have to sit under the ice for many months. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So did you get a lot of awards?
Awards, not really, because, I was a youngster, and so I couldn't do some of these competitions, legally. But what I did was I got a lot of recognition with like TV shows and, things like that, and magazine articles and, things like that.
Wow. So you just like, what is that saying in the West? Belly up to the bar, boy.
Yeah.
You just walked in there and started fishing with the big men.
I just started doing it. Yeah. I just walked in and, I was with a whole bunch of folks that had entered into that industry in a totally different way than I did. But I just kind of walked in and started owning it. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I can see you doing that. So that was not my guess. So number two, about getting fired from the job. Let's tell that story to us.
Sure. So I was working a job and I got a call on a Tuesday morning and I got fired. It was a big surprise to me. Especially because just about a week prior, I had a conversation with one of the senior leaders in the organization that wanted to create a whole new portion of the business and wanted me to be in charge of it and hire a staff and kind of build this whole thing out. And then that following week on a Tuesday morning, what I thought was going to be a strategy call about that ended up me being fired. And I think what we had put up on the headline there was that it turned out to be one of the best things in my life, and certainly was not immediately, as you said, right?
Yeah.
Of that people. There's that grief process, right? Like the stages of
Right.
grief and
The
anger.
rejection.
Yeah, anger, rejection, frustration, all that. I mean, I went through all that stuff. It was ugly, but it ended up being one of the best things that happened to me professionally, because what it did for me is it set me up, and this is going to sound a little backwards, but it set me up to never be dependent on my employer for anything other than me serving the organization in the way that I want to. And what I mean by that is not being dependent on an employer as my identity, or as being dependent from paycheck to paycheck. And obviously benefits. I mean, that's the big thing that a lot of us, I mean, we need jobs for, paying
Right.
benefits and all this sort of stuff. But to be in a place where the recognition, if we come down to brass tacks on this, is that we owe each other nothing in a workplace, because we're in a transactional sort of role, right? And that's that is the one end of the spectrum, but that's like the best way for us to operate, because what we can do is we can work backwards from there, which is like we can have deep, meaningful relationships and feel really passionate about our work, and loving all of the things that we do, which is absolutely where I'm at in my role today. But I can also say, this is not my identity. This is not who I am as a person. This is not the whole of my being. And I can move on, right? So in that sense, I hope that makes sense. Like in that sense,
Yes, it does.
It was one of the best things that happened to me professionally in my life.
Very good.
Yeah.
So might not be correct on that one. Okay, let's go to the third one, which I think is very cool, because I do watch the show Survivor. So you applied and got accepted, and you said no?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
You said no?
Yeah. So here's what happened. Okay.
Maybe it was I don't want to get bitten by mosquitoes and be starving for a week.
So it was the late, I guess, would we call it the 2000s, when it was still in single digits, like 2008, 2009 time. And I was going through a horrendous relationship dissolvement, all this sort of stuff. And I mean, it's kind of funny to like look back on it. I had decided I needed to quit my job. I needed to move away from the area because I needed to get away from this person. And I was in this very prominent public relationship. And I was like, I just need to get away from this person. And I always loved game shows. Like, I mean, I think like a lot of kids, I grew up like watching like Wheel of Fortune and like Jeopardy and all this sort of stuff. But Survivor was huge. I mean, it's still huge. It's in season, I don't even
50.
know now.
It's coming up 50. Why do I know
50,
that?
which is crazy. Yeah. So this would have been, I don't know, season 20 something or whatever. 20.
Ooh.
It was when they were in Samoa. And there was a call for applications. And I had always felt this draw to the Pacific Islands. Like I would love to be out, not just Hawaii, but like Guam and Samoa, kind of all the way over there. I had always been drawn towards the Mariana Islands, and just this idea of I think I am kind of a World War II sort of buff, and so like Guadalcanal and like all the just all of these island cultures that people don't even realize, like all these tiny little islands.
Bali, where's Bali?
Yeah. And so I knew that Survivor was, they always advertise like these are the next couple of seasons. Samoa. Okay, cool. I'm in this crazy time in my life. And I'm like, basically kind of like, screw it, let's do it, right? And so I did my audition tape. I did all the paperwork, like all this sort of stuff. You had to actually send like an actual tape, so I had to have somebody like, that's crazy too. So I did like the audition tape, and I said, here's all these different skills that I have and that I've developed over the years. And here's why I would be the best survivor. I mean, you fill out the whole application. And for anybody who I don't, I haven't applied a second time, but I don't know if it's still the same thing, but it is a very extensive process to apply to any of these reality shows or anything like that. I submitted it basically just as a kind of a screw you universe sort of thing. I applied to Survivor,
I'm
right?
going to do it.
Yeah, because again, I had decided like, I'm going to leave this job. I'm going to move across the country, like all this sort of stuff, which I already had those plans underway. I did not expect to hear anything. And then I got an email and like, we want to set up a call with you, all this sort of stuff, right? And it was Skype back then, right? So like we have this
Right.
Skype call and I meet with these folks and it's like a screening and I'm like, oh, this is like serious, right? So I have this call with them and they're like, this is great. It was like half an hour or so. They're like, we want to pass you on to this other person. Can you meet again tomorrow? I met with that person. They're like, this is really awesome. All this sort of stuff. We're going to send this on to, this other group. We're going to record this. We're going to send this on to this other group, all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. I move, I start this new job. All of a sudden, I get this phone call and I'm like, I don't recognize this number or whatever. And it's a producer person. And they're like, hey, so this is you. We want you to come and be on this next season. Do you have the availability? So it's like 6 weeks. You have to, you have to be able to get yourself there. And then once everything, once you're on the island, everything else is taken care of, blah, blah, blah. Can you do this? And I was like, are you serious? Like, I wasn't like 100% serious about applying for this. And I said no, because I had just established myself in this new job, this other part. I had moved out to Maine, all this sort of stuff. And so I said no. But they were like, we want you to be on the show. Like, we want you to be on Survivor. So they said yes. I said no.
I so would have rooted for you.
Thanks.
You're like the kind of person I like to watch. And then you could have fished because, they're starving all the time.
Well, that was one of the things that I said to them. I was like, listen, like, I got these nature skills. I have, this ability to build relationships with people or like work with people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, could you have lied? That's the thing I get. I was like, oh, man, some of these lies these guys say on that show.
No, it's so horrible. It's so horrible.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And here we are playing two truths and a lie.
Right. Right.
But just sometimes most of these stories are just bent a little bit,
Yeah.
So which one was a lie? Did I get it right or wrong?
You did not. You did not.
Oh.
The lie was the Survivor story.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
well, what is there any truth on it at all?
there is no truth. No, absolutely. I always thought that it would be cool to apply for Survivor or something like that. Now I'm too old and I have 2 young kids and I'm married and all this sort of stuff. But no, there's no truth to it all. Well, actually, I did move to Maine and I did have a new job and all that sort of stuff. So that was true. Yeah. And I was getting out of a
and
bad
so you
relationship.
couldn't have gone anyway, but it was a dream in your mind. Yeah, but people go on there. I think they've had people in their 70s on Survivor. It's insane.
So what you're saying is there's hope yet.
There is hope. And he's always asking, that Jeff Probst, he's always going, hey, please apply. And my husband and I watch it. And then we was like, no, thank you, Jeff.
Right.
Moving on.
What I really want to do, I actually have a friend of mine that was on Wheel of Fortune, and she actually won the show, and she's like, you really should apply, because I watched, I watched Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy and all those shows as a kid, and now that I know somebody that was on the show, she's like, oh yeah, like I'll coach you through the process. You should definitely do it. Like people would love you.
Yeah, they would.
So maybe there's a little bit of future for me in a game show, but not
in a game show,
reality show.
Yeah. That would be so much fun. Well, it's been so fun having you on. I know people will want to know how to get in touch with you, so I'm going to share another screen here and just show a few things. First thing is that you gave me a quote that you kind of like and that kind of relates to you. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So anybody who's familiar with the coffee shop chain Caribou Coffee, I know that they're in some parts of the country.
I
and
like them.
Yes, I love Caribou. So life is short, stay awake for it. That's kind of one of their slogans. And, for anybody who's watching, obviously you've been seeing me kind of sip on my cup of coffee. And the other thing that I have in front of me here is chocolate covered espresso beans. So you can tell I love my caffeine. I love that. Sleep and sleep hygiene is very important to me. I love my sleep and I protect my sleep as much as I can, being a mom of a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. But I also, I try to look at my awake hours as what can I do to maximize every single moment. And so that quote has always spoken to me. Life is short, stay awake for it.
I love it. And then you have other links down here, and she'd like you to reach out to her on her website or LinkedIn. These links will be put in the show notes, so you can make sure you connect with her. And then you had a call to action that they could join you on your Learnit Lounge.
Yeah.
So I'll also put that in the show notes. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things. I host a podcast. So the organization I work for is Learnit. And what we do at Learnit is we do upskilling for people in all different industries. And so my job is to help other people get better at their jobs. So we teach a variety of different workshops, a variety of different topics, all virtually. We do some in-person stuff too. And so one of those calls to action is if you go to learnit.com and /Mickey, you and up to 20 people on your team can get access to our Learnit Team Pass for 45 days. So for a month and a half, you can take as many workshops, you can check things out, see if it would be a fit for you and your organization. Doesn't matter if you're a mom and pop shop or if you're a huge Fortune 100 company. That's a way for you to kind of experience us, to take some workshops with me and some of my teammates. I also have a podcast that I host called the Learnit Lounge, which is all about kind of the process of learning and development in the work world. And so I welcome people, if you want to listen to that, go ahead and do that too. But LinkedIn is the best way to get a hold of me and be in touch. And I would welcome folks to get connected, send me a message. I love LinkedIn and I love all those ongoing conversations that I have with folks there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been really fantastic.
Yeah.
For those that are listening, please stay tuned for the episode next week that's coming out. And from your Admiral of the Unexpected, I wish you smooth sailing.
Thanks, Jeannie, so much
Bye.
for the opportunity.